Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Street Fighter G.I.JOE. We were dropped right in the middle of the World Warrior Tournament, with many fights already decided before the first issue began, and the ones we saw ranging from fun to brutal. It was all to power the Psycho Drive, a science backpack of doom that enhances M. Bison's already formidable abilities, as he savagely demonstrated on his former lackey, Cammy White. Now the quarterfinals begin. Issue 3's cover has a great big free-for-all of tiny versions of Street Fighters, Joes, and Cobra encompassing the menacing hands of an enormous Bison.
Did you see anything? No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again. Good!
And it doesn't seem to be strictly good versus bad either. We see some protagonists targeting each other too. You'd think they'd at least wait until the villains are defeated before settling any personal differences, but whatever. We go right into the first match of the quarterfinals, surprisingly agile Rufus versus Snake Eyes, the former boasting as usual until Snake dodges his first punch, and he hits the ring, injuring his hand. That, and getting easily tripped, has him crying no fair and how dishonorable his ninja tricks are, so he does some fancy footwork and a flip before attacking with his spectacle romance, which involves a red lens flare from his lips somehow.
This better not awaken anything in me.
Given the name, I figured it'd at least be heart-shaped, but moving on. There's a pause that has the audience, filled with other fighters and Joes, on the edge of their seats, until Snake Eyes falls to his knees, losing the match. Rufus returns to his girlfriend Candy, declaring himself not only America's greatest martial artist, but the realest American hero. Massive ego, obvious weight problem, disproportionately hot girlfriend. Seems more like a standard sitcom protagonist, if you ask me. Storm Shadow remarks good work to his rival, and if you look at his caption, where they've been the same thing for each character, repeated as necessary in previous issues, his has Cobra crossed out, leaving in Agent. Maybe he's mocking Snake Eyes, or maybe he's looking to represent him in show business. You may have noticed that our mute commando is wearing a different uniform than he had last time. Yeah, expect more of that, as it's likely a reference to alternate colors or skins fighting games tend to have. Case in point, Hakan has an open shirt and a fez as he slathers himself in oil. Seems like it would have been to his advantage to stay shirtless and not mess up his clothes, but hey, what do I know? He's facing Jinx.
You remind me of my daughter! Beating you won't be easy for me! Is there any chance I could win by sending you to your room without supper?
As they begin, Jinx finds it difficult to keep a hold of the oil wrestler that she saw douse himself, despite saying she watched the fight with Roadblock like she had learned anything. She loses her grip, her footing, and her cool, so frustrated that she begins to glow red as Rio had before. He, meanwhile, is behind some Cobra goons, figuring he'd made a mistake and prepares a Hadouken to strike her down. Fortunately, she calms herself, so that won't be necessary. Blocking Hakan's attacks, she'll need to use his size and strength against him, which she says out loud, so he'll never suspect a thing. He jumps up, appearing to try landing on her, but she jumps past him, leaving him to hit the ground, jaw first, and that's it. That's how he loses the fight. And here's one of the hiccups in the story. What constitutes a KO has been a bit inconsistent. Yeah, Hakan may have been actually knocked out by that landing, but we've seen Roadblock and Gung Ho break stone with their heads, and they're just fine. And they don't even have helmets covered in Minicon ports. Not to mention, we've seen characters hit the floor, stay there for just a bit, but get back up without losing. Guile tells his contact that the backup he previously arranged is not with him. I guess he means Chun-Li, who's looking after a recovering Cammy. While the latter is one of the toughest people Brushhead knows, despite how badly Bison pummeled her, he's more worried about Chun-Li and her pride, after her loss to Zartan. I guess that's supposed to speak to Cammy's tenacity and Guile's respect for her, which, fine, but considering one of these ladies suffered severe physical injury and trauma, and the other just got tricked by someone working with the enemy, an enemy that's in charge of the tournament, I can't say I understand giving Chun-Li the bulk of sympathy here. The next match sees Guile facing the Dreadnought leader, and his contact warns not to underestimate the villain, as he's done worse to better opponents. Their fight begins, and Zartan strikes first, shooting at the pilot, but only ripping open his bandages and getting his face kicked in return. Guile is about to press his attack, but when his foe changes into an injured Cammy, asking why he just watched Bison hurt her, he's startled enough that he's open to a kick to his junk, and then Zartan twisting and punching his shoulder. What? This makes no sense to me. He saw the guy transform, he knows it's what Zartan does, and he knows his friend didn't just get teleported there. Why is he instantly taken aback by an obvious trick? Just for that, I'm using another clip to emphasize how stupid this is.
Dumb. 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 Dumb.
I knew you didn't have the stones to face me. And where do you come off bragging, you masquerade moron? You lucked out with the cheapest psychological trick in the book instead of fighting him head on. Here's your clip.
He is a coward after all.
Brushhead is again asked if they should go with Plan B, and he turns it down, just as his dance partner steps aside for Crocmaster to throw Emmy Lou at him. While it is implied his arm may have been broken, possibly his shoulder dislocated, it's not clear, the flyboy's wing seems fine enough when he jumps up, grabs the crocodile, and lands with its back hitting his other shoulder. This does some injury, how severe they don't say, because then we go to Zartan's horrified face, knowing what it means when Guile puts on his shades. He's about to make a pun that begins an episode of CSI! Actually, it's his signature attack, the Sonic Boom, which wins him the fight. Baroness is none too pleased at this latest loss, in addition to Storm Shadow going AWOL. How do we keep control of your boyfriend, Bison?
For the last time, Anastasia, he's not my boyfriend. He was just looking at his reflection in my forehead to check for spinach in his teeth.
Laird Destro assures her he has a backup plan, as always. The next match is, incidentally, between the Tyrant and the AWOL Ninja. Though I think it'd be more accurate to say he's gone rogue, but maybe I'm splitting hairs. Bison brags how, with his own considerable power enhanced by Destro's wearable psychodrive, he's basically unstoppable, made only stronger by Shadow's attacks. He goes on that his plan is to completely fill the drive once the tourney is done, then start going to major cities across the world, destroying them one by one with explosions of his power, reducing them to cinders until they ultimately swear fealty to him. And even though he'll be using his power to fly there, you just know he's going to try writing the travel off on his taxes. While he won't have need of Destro or Mars Industries after this, he could use someone as ruthless and efficient as the ninja, as he dodges his arrows and rapid kicks his back.
Intelligent, but not too intelligent.
Yay, you hurt my feelings.
He can't win, but he needn't lose. Only forfeit and join the Tyrant. Shadow refuses, and Bison figures, soldiers are cheap, smacking the ninja down with his power some more. Yet he again makes the offer to give up and join him, since Destro won't save him like he did the Baroness.
This is your last chance, your final opportunity, your terminal decision, your concluding choice, your endmost selection. Have I spent enough time outlining how I'm not going to provide this deal again?
Stormy draws his other sword and presents it to Bison, giving up the fight. The Tyrant takes the blade, turning around and gloating how he can't be stopped, will rule the world and be worshipped as a god, when his supposed new minion hurls a pair of shuriken at him, damaging the psychodrive. Then he demands Destro fix it immediately.
Puny god.
Baroness isn't happy about the damage to their prototype device either, but Destro remains very casual, as he reminds her that he always has redundancies in place. You know, like a backup, something he mentioned a couple pages ago. So it really makes you wonder if that earlier scene, which, much like this one, saw the Baroness get ticked off and Metalface being confidently nonchalant, was really necessary. But hey, I guess Destro reiterating his point only proves his penchant for redundancies.
It's my job to be repetitive. My job. My job. Repetitiveness is my job.
Issue 4's cover has several protagonists, some of them haven't even been featured in the story so far, looking like they're charging into battle against a backdrop of splattered yellows and oranges. Except Cammy, she looks like she's flexing after winning a marathon. With 4 combatants left, we enter the semi-finals, with Rufus about to step into the ring in a luxurious pink robe. His opponent is Jinx, who blindfolds herself, both because she studied under the Blind Master, and so she doesn't have to look at his gaudy attire. though Rufus ends up tossing it to his lady, claiming his opponent is merely frightened of being overwhelmed by desire for his Adonic physique. Okay, which one of you told Rufus that Adonis was the guy who makes all-you-can-eat buffets go out of business? That's just mean. Guile finds this too risky, that being arrogant is not going to bring victory, but Ryu corrects him, that Jinx is merely confident, as she deftly evades Rufus's attacks and gets in the first hit. He complains, of course, doubting if the blindfold is real, but between the sound of his footsteps and his cheap body spray, sight is one sense she doesn't need to detect his presence. It's his own fault for buying Overcompensation by Calvin Klein. She redirects his charge so he faceplants into the hubcap of the already damaged car, I guess earning her 100 points, and he retaliates for the crack about his smell with his Big Bang Typhoon. But that gets interrupted when the young ninja strikes a couple of pressure points on his arm.
Arr! Stop doing that! What kind of tournament is this where your opponent has a chance of beating you?
He manages to restrain her arms with his legs, and sweet flying chicken monkeys. The fact that she doesn't immediately fall over from all that weight must mean she's Kryptonian or something. He attempts his hand machine gun, I am assuming a series of rapid precision hits, but the arm that Jinx struck prior is apparently incapacitated. And spilling nuts and bolts? Are they falling out of his arm, or were they stuck to him after he hit the car? Maybe it's a Street Fighter reference that's just lost on me. Anyway, she headbutts him to the ground, but he manages to get back up, not knowing the meaning of the word embarrassment, a statement Candy unironically confirms as she starts getting cozy with Roadblock, and suggests cooking something up with the chef.
She's a nice lady.
This even as Jinx continues to effortlessly overpower Rufus amid his protestations, until he finally, tearfully, throws in the towel. If he'd waited any longer, she was going to give him a swirly. No sooner has he lost than he complains it's all a travesty. He never tapped out, which, yeah, he did. He demands a rematch as he pulls Candy aside and the ring is cleared for the next match. A bandaged Cammy is at least back on her feet, seething at the sight of Bison, who mocks her repeated failure to end him. With Chun-Li holding her back, Cammy tells Guile to tear the despot apart. The second fight starts, and the soldier wastes no time starting with a surprise flying kick, followed up by a few more hits and several sonic booms, each of which he calls out because the games, I guess. This doesn't do much against Bison, who slams his foe's head against the floor, but Guile takes a loose chunk of rock and clobbers him in the face with it. He says he wants everything the madman has, so the madman obliges, doing that oft-memed pose from the animated series, as his psycho drive powers up, apparently not too damaged from Storm Shadow's attack. The voice in Guile's ear tells him to remember his orders not to be a hero, and ease off the sirs. I haven't been officially knighted yet, just give it another week. Evading attacks, Guile gets him in a hold, but the villain conjures an energy shield that sends him flying into a nearby military vehicle because I guess the rider suddenly decided the sedan had suffered enough. He must be on the verge of passing out because Cammy tells him to wake up, as Bison launches himself at the soldier, swirling with psycho energy. The pilot moves out of the way at the last second, as the dictator collides with the jeep and it explodes. Cammy urges her friend to take the shot and finish their foe off, but Guile simply apologizes, asking her to trust him as he launches a sonic hurricane that misses Bison, but does heavily damage the drive on his back. And in a rage, the villain attains victory by clobbering Guile with a jeep door. I guess there were no folding chairs nearby. Work with what you got and all that. Bison's also ticked at Destro's shoddy craftsmanship, but the laird figures he can win the finals without it. Still, he'll have his men make what repairs they can. Cammy yells at Guile, knowing he's a good enough shot that he could have finished Bison off, and asks whose side he's even on, as the issue ends on the dictator sneering at his next and last opponent, Jinx, claiming she's in over her head. He's not trying to psych her out, he's trying to psycho her out. Yeah, that's a justified reaction. There's one fight and 2 issues left. See who wins the tournament next week, and if the prize is cash, a trophy, or some lovey-dovey metaphorical twist like the power of friendship or something. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.